What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always, and for the first time in a bit too long, Connor Rogers, to continue to talk and react to the New York Jets Week 1 loss. We are going to dedicate the entire podcast to what Connor saw in the film, further venting from myself. Then we're going to go record War Room, answer all of your Discord questions, and start to preview the Titans game. That will run on the feed tomorrow morning in video form. Pod is going to flip right after this late afternoon. Connor, late night for us both, particularly late night for you. Great job on SNY as always. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good right now. I always kind of run on adrenaline, at least for the first primetime game where, you really don't sleep a lot. You probably knock out around 3. Was up early, work this morning, but like you feel way better after a win. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
That just absolutely gets the juices flowing rather than 100 million people, saying like, oh, like they suck again, or like, all the non-surface level nonsense. But I feel good right now. You and I were joking that like we're just both gonna just knock out at some point early tonight at all.
Collapsing.
Yeah, you get like 2 days without football and you can kind of catch up. But we have a lot to talk about today. It's there is, I feel like a sky is falling, theme going on, and I think there was definitely a lot of things to be extremely disappointed with on Monday Night Football with the Jets opener. But in the big picture, it's one loss, and a loss against a team that I think is a top 3 team in the NFL. And if anyone finds that egregious, they haven't watched much NFL football over the last couple of years. And it's a tough draw. And to be honest with you, like the Jets defense didn't show up. There's no way around it. I'm going to dive into all the numbers here today of, kind of what the Niners did and why it's disappointing. But, I said a couple of weeks ago, I think the Jets are going to lose week 1, and then I think they're going to get hot against inferior opponents. Now it's time to clean up some of the flaws that would cost you against those inferior opponents, so you can't play the same way, and get hot all the way till the matchup against the Bills in 5 weeks or so, where you hope to be 4-1 going into that game.
Yeah, I think that's the right balanced way to look at it. Somehow I forgot, even though this has happened a million times, and the Jets have lost something like 15 of their last 16 primetime games, how much it sucks to lose primetime games, especially as you start getting a little older.
Twitter's
like
unbearable.
It's unbearable.
Right?
I mean, it's unbearable, and our Discord our Discord is Jet fans, myself included. We go up and down during this game, but it's a little more of like we vent it all out, and then we kind of even out as the game ended, and we work through it today. So that's been a nice place to be. But just even like the text messages, the national discourse, it just sucks. And last night sucked. It's just
I think it's worse than ever because you have a pretty wide branch of people, and not just random people, like people that are in the media or a lot of different branches of society that they just despise Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
So you have that branch of people that are rooting for the absolute worst for the Jets, and which is fine. Like that's your right to do. I don't care. Like people that don't like Aaron Rodgers, I don't sit there and go like, how can you not like Aaron Rodgers? Like I understand like how controversial he could be, but from a football perspective, that's really exhausting. You have the people that, I think Kyle Brandt did a really good job of this morning, a video I saw where the reaction is supposed to be like, oh, same old Jets. I was floored at basically the disrespect for Kyle Shanahan. People treated this like the Jets lost, I don't even know what team to use in this instance. So the Cardinals, it got blown out by the Cardinals and just, they're the same exact team where, I mean, the Niners are, when you really dive into schematically, and it's not a good thing for Saleh, right? To just have circles coached around him by a guy he used to work for. But I found that really interesting today. Just how many people don't realize how great Kyle Shanahan is and that program they've built, and how much of that's a program with talent. They're not a team like the Patriots for a long time always seem to kind of try to run by being a program. And when the talent faded out, their success faded out. The Niners are a team that they have the program established, and now the talent has caught up, and that's why they're so special. The Jets, to me, are the perfect example last night of a team that has the talent and a lot of holes in the program. And they're trying to have the talent overcome the holes in the program. In my opinion, and I got slaughtered for picking the Bills to win this division, despite saying the Jets will win 10 or 11 games and make a wild card. Slaughtered, which is fine. That's okay. Everybody could have their own opinions. the Jets are a team to me that, like, with that style, I think they should beat the Titans. I think they should beat the Broncos. I think they can be competitive in the division as we've seen them against the Bills in the past. I'm not a believer yet because of that they're in that really small bundle that have those things established, program and talent. Chiefs, 49ers. I put the Lions there right now. The Ravens on their best day have that. I'm not ready to put the Jets there. And if people have a problem with that, that's fine. But I'm waiting for the proof that that's wrong right now.
Yeah, I think it's okay with last night to be like, look, that sucked. That wasn't fun after the first quarter. It does not mean the sky is falling. It does not mean they can't beat the Titans or the Patriots or the Broncos or even the Vikings. It's week one, which we caveated a lot, that there will be overreactions all over the league. And it's just a very good football team. Do you know how hard it is to get to the Final Four in the NFL 4 straight years with a league with so much parity, especially when you haven't had like a Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick situation? That's how good Shanahan is. That's how good the infrastructure is. And even without McCaffrey, which, look, that was a that was a big break for the Jets. They could still run the hell out of the football. I mean, we know how it works in this scheme. We've been watching it since we've been kids, when Terrell Davis and Reuben Drones and Orlandis Gary come in and run for 1,500 yards every year. And
Clinton Portis.
That's what happened. Yeah, that's what happened last night. And I picked them to lose. I thought they would be more competitive.
Me too. I thought they'd cover.
Even when they were, what's frustrating is that the Niners played a very good game, and the Jets, they had the advantage with the coaching. The Jets it was still sloppy, right? What does the game look like if Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, was on Garrett Wilson, are on the same page on that first down deep shot that they took, one of the few ones they did? What does the game look like if Breece Hall doesn't fumble? What does it look like if the Jets don't have a handful of like dopey penalties and are smarter with their short yardage play calling? They got a disappointing game and a banged up game from Mosley. They got a weird second quarter from Sauce where he was out of breath that the Niners took advantage of.
That was
not a good Quinnen game, not a good Quincy game, not a good AVT game, not a good, their great players weren't great. You and I are not surprised to see Clemens and Saul Thomas getting knocked around and struggling.
Years of it. Yeah.
Not surprised to see their safeties not be good. It's their great players not being great. And then the lack of creativity on offense and some of the recurring concerns we've had with this coaching staff. And still, this game was competitive-ish. It was 16-7 at halftime. It should have been closer at halftime if the Jets didn't make the dumb mistakes I just laid out. And at the end of the day, the Niners are better than them right now. And they punched back, and the Jets did not have a plan B. What's the real test now is that you have to fly from San Francisco back to New Jersey and then back to Tennessee on a short week. The Titans are not good, but they can run the hell out of the football. And you got to find a way to that's the game if you lose. And we'll talk about this more in War Room. That's a different conversation. Having Kyle Shanahan outcoach Robert Saleh, sadly, is just not surprising. And having some of the flaws in the roster show that we've talked about is not surprising. They lost by more than we'd like to see. And so you've rewatched now, you've seen all 22. What were your main takeaways, and what were, like, from the early discourse, what do you think were what some people were right about, and what were some of the misperceptions about what went wrong in this game?
Right. So right before I get there, great call out that there's a lot of things that are still working against the Jets that naturally will work for them over time. Mike Williams is on a pitch count. He's their number 2 wide receiver. Elijah Vera-Tucker is coming off a torn Achilles, and from what I've seen so far, he actually looked really good in pass pro. He wasn't the difference maker in the run game that he is, and that's a massive variable for the Jets. They really need him to be their best run blocker and one of the best run blocking guards in the NFL. Rodgers hasn't played football in how long? I actually thought he threw the hell out of the football. There was just a couple timing hiccups there that he's got to get game reps with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin and those guys. And you saw the built-in timing with Allen Lazard already, right? Yeah. Like, Allen Lazard, real talk, has 40%.
Fantasy pickup for everyone, Allen Lazard.
God. He has, 40% of the talent of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, but he had a more productive day than anybody because they've played together for year after year after year. That's eventually going to come together for Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Tyler Conklin with Rodgers. So those, let's be fair to those things, that they are going to get better. And honestly, it wasn't that bad against a really good team in the Niners that you can say, oh, they have coaching turnover all the time, a defensive coordinator, but they don't have scheme turnover. Kyle keeps the same infrastructure and scheme and hires the coach to run the scheme. So it's not one of those scenarios where the turnover ever really affects them, as you saw last night. So let's get into the nitty gritty here. I watched this afternoon a real deep dive on what the Niners did offensively to the Jets, because I thought that was some of the worst I've seen the Jets look defensively in a really long time, counting the Saleh era, counting the Greg Williams era.
It was a lot like that, like Eagles game from like Saleh's first year, where they just beat the crap out of the Jets and were like talking shit and ran the ball all over them. That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that, okay, so here's some of the trends and numbers that I've kind of written down as I watch these plays. So the Niners ran 72 offensive plays, and on 42 of the 72, this is a jarring percentage, they either had a second tight end or a fullback in. Juszczyk is their notorious fullback. He's been the best in the league for a long time because he's really more than a fullback. He can block like a tight end. He can catch the ball like a running back. He can block on the move from the backfield. He can line up a tight end. He can do everything for it. That's why he's paid the way he is. But when their second tight end was in the game, not Juszczyk, but Eric Saubert, number 82 that you saw a lot of last night, he played 19 of the snaps. They ran the ball 85% of the time. So when the Niners put the second tight end, and we know how good George Kittle is, right?
Yep.
So what the Niners do to you is they have 5 offensive linemen, duh. One of them is Trent Williams, one-man wrecking crew. Trent Williams looked 60 pounds overweight, and he was still lights. Like he kicked the shit out of the Jets last night, okay? Yeah. And he's not even in game shape yet. It's one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever seen play left tackle. So there's that. What they played so heavy, 42 of the 72 offensive plays. They had 2 extra blockers in, whether it was in the form of an extra tight end, besides Kittle, or Juszczyk, who's an absolute killer. So keep that in mind. When the second tight end was in, they basically always ran the ball. The Jets so often played these super light fronts. They'd have 3 down defensive linemen. They would add an extra linebacker in the field or bring a safety in the box. The safeties are Tony Adams or Ashton Davis. They're not stopping anyone in the run. And when you have all these, here's what the Niners would do. And this isn't anything shocking. By the way, they ran outside zone 61% of the time because they want the Jets DBs to have to come up and tackle. And guess what? The Jets DBs suck at it besides Chuck Clark. Like, real talk, let's have a real conversation. Sauce was bad tackling in this game. I thought Reed was competitive. And for a smaller guy, Reed is always very competitive in the run game. Michael Carter is clearly dealing with this ankle injury, by the way, that Saleh talked about after the game. And I don't really love hearing, high ankle. Like, you just got to deal with it throughout the year. That a slot corner dealing with two-way goes on a high ankle. I'd rather rest him and get him right. I'm not going down that road today. When I heard that, I'm like, oh, that's good. Tony Adams, honestly, just one of the worst tackling safeties, unfortunately, I've seen play for the Jets in a while. And I know he does some.
And we dealt with Jordan Whitehead, and now we go to this situation. Dealt with Whitehead.
Chuck Clark, very good tackler. I want to exclude him from this group. Chuck was as advertised. I think the Jets missed 13 tackles in this game, by the way. So they run outside zone because they want your DBs to have to come up and tackle. And guess what? They really can't. So that's got to get better. And then back to the original point. When the Jets are playing these 3 down defensive linemen and kind of littering the field with linebackers, whether it's a 3-3 or they'll have Jermaine standing up. And by 3-3, I mean they'd actually have 3 off-ball linebackers on the field, which is not common in their defense. And obviously, the third one is usually Sherwood, who, by all accounts, had the training camp of his life. He really, really struggled against the 49ers. And to be fair, I don't want to be harsh on individuals in this game because really the defense wasn't good as a whole. Sauce was great in coverage because he's Sauce Gardner, one of the best cover corners in the NFL. I thought Kinlaw was solid, by the way. That's really all I got for you. Like, Clark was okay. I really don't have any standout performances after that. Obviously, Mosley got banged up. I keep having to go back to the point. It's amazing how I interrupt myself. They would double team Quinnen and sometimes Kinlaw. So they'd have these combos, these double teams on the big-bodied run stuffers, and there's only 2 of them out there. Trent Williams can erase whoever is the lone edge. It happened to Jermaine Johnson a couple times, so it happened to everybody. He can erase that player. And then when guys get off the doubles, they can climb. Oh, and then you have George Kittle, Eric Saubert, Juszczyk, just running like madman, whether it's across the formation or at the second level, detonating people at the second level. And they're playing so far back that if those doubles get to the defensive linemen, listen, we could be harsh on it wasn't a great Quinnen Williams game, but Quinnen Williams is the focal point for the offense to wipe out. Somebody else has to make a play, okay? If Quinnen Williams is being double-teamed, somebody else has to make a play, and Javon Kinlaw being double-teamed. So when those linebackers are, and they were hesitant, when the linebackers are playing off, the defensive linemen are being double-teamed, you're already playing with the light front. And Saleh and Ulbrich are going to learn the hard way from watching this game because nobody's going to do this like the Niners. But Bill Callahan, one of the best offensive line coaches in NFL history and a run game coordinator on Tennessee, who wants to run the ball because Will Levis is just out of his mind giving away the game. Tony Pollard looks really good, by the way. Tennessee is going to do the same bullshit to you. Is it going to be George Kittle and Juszczyk and Trent Williams? No. So it's going to be a little bit more easy to stop. But it's still, you can't play like you did Monday night and expect to stop the Tennessee run game. Can't do that to the Patriots. Can't do that to Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell. Like can't do it to Sean Payton and the Broncos. And they're terrible, that team. They can't throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field, but you have to stop the run. It's the baseline of football. The Jets got blown off the ball against the Niners, and that's going to happen to a lot of teams against the Niners. You want to be a contender? This is what you got to do. So I thought some of it was the personnel and some of it was the coaching. These fronts they were showing, they didn't stand a chance. When those defensive linemen get doubled and the running back is basically getting 3 free yards before somebody's, because the linebackers are not reacting quick enough before an offensive lineman is in their face, before George Kittle is in their face. I mean, the Jets looked overwhelmed. Let me call it what it is. The dam broke, and it was. They didn't expect blockers coming across the formation. They were reacting to fakes. There was no pass rush. They weren't good enough to put themselves in situation to rush the passer enough, right? And it's funny, like somehow a few people do this, but Will McDonald, quiet again. Will McDonald got them off the field in the second before the halftime. By the way, that pass play, he's the only one that got home on anything, and he wasn't great. But listen, this was not the best game for Jermaine, who we love. It was not the best. They just were overwhelmed. They need to play a heavier front in that situation, and I don't care if this is the scheme we do. This is what you need to make adjustments. If you need to be a heavier team, if you need to change what kind of front you're running, if you need more down defensive linemen, if you need to, and the Jets were not good at man coverage last night. Cover one, they were terrible. But if you need to play an 8-man box and Sauce Gardner's on an island and DJ Reed's on an island, and you got a single high safety, that's why they're some of your best players. You got to play an 8-man box. So those are, and one last thing. The 10 times Juszczyk was in the backfield, not used as a tight end, the Niners ran on 7 of them. You know what they're doing. Yeah. The numbers are the numbers. Like, I'm an